Well, welcome everybody to the July edition of the Recruiting Insider webinar, and I'm noticing that quite a few people are signing in here at the last minute, but we're going to go ahead and get started, and as that number is quickly climbing. So anyway, they can catch up and as we go along, and of course all of these are available recorded, and we'll send that link to you following the event. And with that being said, I did do a couple of real quick housekeeping things. Our next month's webinar will be on August 24th at 10 a.m. And so stand by for information on that. Of course, I want to thank TruckRight, HireRight, and Ramsey Media Works for their support in the webinar, and appreciate them, helping to send out information to their contacts and those people being a part of this webinar as well. Matt Lee from Ramsey Media Works is actually out of country today, and the other folks there are tied up as well on different client visits and such. So I will be I'm sorry, I need to silence my phone. I got a little distracted there. Thought maybe one of you guys were texting me, "Hey Kelly, I can't hear you," or something. And to the gentleman that asked, I thought there was free beer. That is actually at the Louisville Truck Show. We'll let everybody know about that when we. That was just a joke between me and a friend. We'll let everybody know as we get closer to the Louisville Truck Show about the reception I put out on Thursday nights out in the RV section of the campground there, right outside the West Wing. Anyway, back to Ramsey. Those folks are all tied up, so I'm going to do this real quick. When I was over recruiting at CFI, just started out taking care of recruiting, and Julie Ramsey was my advertising rep, and she brought me a report. Julie is huge, and the entire Ramsey team is huge on tracking, because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And she brought me a report and said that, hey Kelly, it looks like you only took 75 calls last week. And so I showed that to my staff and said, hey, we took 75 calls, and so come on people, we need to track our advertising. And so then the next week came and she showed me a report for 75 calls again. And I said, so I brought that to the recruiters. I had 8 recruiters at the time, and I was like, folks, I got the tracking report here, and well, it looks like we took 75 phone calls last week. And the truth is, we all know that I don't need 8 people to handle 75 phone calls. And so I just need to ask that people kind of step up and make a decision on who wants to quit, and I'll try to find the other positions in the company if there are any, but I don't know any right now. And of course, the room just exploded. Oh, Kelly, we know we took more phone calls than that. And I'm like, I know you took more phone calls than that as well, but if we're not tracking it, we can't measure it. And I said, if we're not tracking it, all we're doing is throwing money out the window. And I took the $25 bills and threw them across the boardroom table there. And so by the way, to my gentleman asking about the beer, $25 bills equals $100. I made sure that I counted those as everybody left the room, make sure I got my money back. But anyway, folks, if we are not tracking our advertising and finding out where the calls are coming from, where the leads are coming from, whether they're calls or whether they're internet leads, we are throwing money out the window. And so I'm about up with the time that I have to talk about that piece, but we've got to track, and Ramsey's huge on this, because the number one place that drivers look for a job today is the internet. And so with analytics now, we're able to see, where the people came from, which one of our internet leads that they saw, and then what did they do next? Did they fill out a mini application? Did they fill out a full-blown application? Did they call us? Through the call tracking we can put on it as well. So we can tell where all the leads are coming from. Then we can see what type of apps we got from them. And ultimately, this is what I ultimately care about, is how many people did we get hired? And because frankly, I don't need to bury you in leads. I need to bury you in people that are going to work for you. And then the next step is tracking your application pool. Folks, I'm in the middle of doing an undercover trucker event, and some of you may know that I get hired to go through orientations as a truck driver. And I talked to a recruiter the other day, and I guarantee you, he has absolutely no record of who I am and is not going to do any follow-up with me. He sent me a link with some information, and it was advertised. It was very personal. It said driver, and then gave me information, and then sent me the application link for their company. And I guarantee you, if I don't fill that application out, I'm not going to get called back. We need to know of the leads we received, where are they at in our process, and so that if we don't get the application back, if that is a piece where you've sent a link and you haven't got it back, we need to have a system in place wherein to follow up with that person and say, hey, I was expecting to talk to you today. I was expecting to get an application from you today, and follow up with them and see where we're at. But that's a whole other section where I talk about creating a plan of action. And because when you create a plan of action with an applicant, they have a reason to want to go along with you. But the other step is we've got to have a process in place so that we're managing that. And if somebody does not meet us at our next strategic touch point, or our next, the time that we're supposed to talk, then we have a plan in order to recontact them, because good drivers are hard to find. But I find a lot of applicants will apply. Matter of fact, when I apply as an undercover trucker, and then people don't call me back. We talked about this in a previous webinar. It's not until I call that it takes it to the next step. I also find that recruiters have worked applications and have never reached out and followed up with the driver that filled out the application. So you have a ton of wasted money sitting in that application pool. I've got to get off that because I need to get on to our other subject, and that is the number one issue impacting commitment, productivity, and profitability. I want to take us back. This ties in with what we talked about in our last webinar, where I talked about the similarities of football and trucking. And the point that we made is that you can see it listed here, that all the way down in players and drivers. Football teams want to win games. Trucking companies want to haul freight profitably. And the only way we can reach our goal is if everybody does their part. And one thing we've got to do is stop injuring the players on our own team. We got to stop the shin kicking. What does shin kicking stand like? I don't know what recruiting told you, but this is the way it is, from the orientation instructor. Or, man alive, who in the world thought this was a good piece of freight? Or, why can't you fix a truck right the first time? How long does it take to fix one anyway? If safety would quit running our drivers off. What in the world were you thinking? It just goes on and on and on. All of these lead people to it's shin kicking, and they're being attacked, and then it leads people to be afraid to make decisions, afraid, we're not trusting each other, and then afraid that they're going to get their head cut off. So when you think about a football team, the quarterback trusts the receiver is going to be where he's supposed to be. He doesn't throw the ball where the receiver is. He throws the ball where the receiver is going to be. The front line knows their job, and they push the rushers to the right, or into the right direction to open up the hole, for the runner to run through. And you know what? When people are facing tough opposition, they do the right thing. They're trained to do the right thing, and they do the right thing to the best of their ability. Does it always work out? Well, you can see in football teams sometimes it doesn't, but do they go back and start shin kicking each other, or do they support each other and start working with each other to make the next play better? And so if your team doesn't have trust, there's no commitment. People can't get committed to people that they don't trust. It slows and or stops productivity because, you know what, I'm afraid to make a decision. I'm afraid to do this. Oh, I've got to double check and recheck. That happened at GM years ago, wherein, the new president, Richardson, took over as president of GM, and he says, the problem with GM is, everybody is afraid of making mistakes, and you don't want to own the mistakes, and so then they just kept rechecking and checking and double checking and triple checking, and he says, it's not enough to bring things to market. If you bring it late, then you've already lost the opportunity. He said, secondly, after all this time that we sit back and because we don't want to own a mistake, we end up taking it to market and there's mistakes anyway. So, we folks, and that's a management piece where we have to accept honest mistakes. Something I learned a long time ago is that the only people making mistakes are those people that are doing something. Those that don't make any mistakes, you might want to check their productivity and their actual work, because the truth is they're probably not actually doing anything. And I have a management trainee story to tell about that, where they were taking credit for all the work my other folks were doing and blaming people for the work they did. And the thing that tipped me off is they never ever made even, never made any mistakes. Now, I don't accept slothful mistakes, but I do accept honest mistakes. Take ownership and fix it. If you don't have trust in your company, it stifles creativity. I hear presidents and managers say to me, "Man alive, am I the only person that can see what needs to be done? Am I the only person that can come up with new ideas and new procedures?" Folks, if your folks are not productive and they're not creative, it may be because you have a cultural problem in the company where there's a lack of trust that they feel safe and secure, and that they'll be okay. You know what? A lack of trust creates a CYA mentality. Here's a real quick example. When you see people copying other people on emails that don't need to be copied on the email, you got a problem. I mean, that's the first indicator that I see that people are not trusting each other, and they don't trust that their word will be taken, and they don't trust that that they're going to be okay. So what do? They start copying the world. Now, one thing where it starts is sometimes it starts because somebody wants to embarrass somebody else. And you know what? As a manager, you've got to stop that immediately. I had one of my employees copy me on an email a few months ago that I did not need to be copied on, and I took that right to them and says, "Please explain to me why I'm on this email." And there was no good reason. And I told them right then, we don't do that here. If we start embarrassing each other, throwing each other under the bus, and start that type of culture in our company, and then all productivity is going to stop, all creativity is going to stop, ownership, responsibility, and accountability, people are going to be backing away from that, and it's going to cost us in the end. It will kill our company. Folks, that is a cancer that will kill your company. I had a client out in Texas that I was working with on this, and I mean, it was rampant, and it got so bad because everybody was copying everybody else, and then when somebody answered, they replied all. And so then when that person answered, they replied all. And so in short order, the emails, their server was clogged with emails. So they bought a bigger server, and then they clogged that one as well. And then pretty soon, there are so many emails in the inbox that you can't see the ones you need to see for all the ones that you don't need to see. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars were being spent in salaries of people sifting through emails they should have never been seeing in the first place. And then secondly, millions of dollars lost because of customer service failures and lost opportunities because, frankly, we probably just deleted the messages anyway because we didn't see the one in the middle there that we needed to read. Another, I found a guy that was printing messages and filing them, and he had boxes and boxes full of email messages where he'd print them all day, every day. So now he's costing you paper, costing you ink, costing you productivity time, and he's taking them home and filing them in his house. The truth is that's a false premise anyway. If something happens, how in the world are you going to go back and find that email anyway? So, folks, this all goes back to the fact that somewhere along the way, people started shin-kicking each other. And then they stopped trusting each other. And then they started copying everybody else on emails, and then it just got rampant from there. So, and I said already, if people don't trust, they will not take ownership, responsibility, or be accountable. They're going to do everything they can to keep their head down. You know, I had another client where the manager believed that if somebody made a mistake, the way to keep everybody else from making the same mistake is to make sure that you make a public humiliation out of the person that made the mistake. So I kid you not. I mean, are we in the 1940s? I don't even know if they did that in the 40s. I mean, this is barbaric. So he walked into the operations floor, somebody had made a mistake, and I mean started ripping him at the top of his lungs, screaming at this person, how stupid are you? Of course, dropping F-bombs and using my Lord's name in vain. And I mean, you wouldn't believe the show. And now his belief, ignorant as it is, was that, okay, now other people saw what has just happened, so they'll make sure they won't make that mistake. You know what? You're right. They'll make sure they don't make any mistakes. They'll make sure that is never them. And so what happens is everybody goes in a bunker mentality. Head drops below the cubicle walls, and I'm just sitting here doing my thing. What are they doing? They're just going through the motions. You don't need employees going through the motions. You need employees that are engaged. So, you know, how do we get there? You know, one thing that we've got to realize, going back to the football team, the quarterback can't be the center at the same time he's quarterback, and he can't be the wide receiver. He can't throw the ball and catch the ball. And when I think about trucking, there are people that are on this call that are phenomenal recruiters, but you suck as a mechanic. Let's just get real about it. You don't know how to fix the truck. You know what? We've got people that are great in operations, but when it comes to compliance, you have no clue about the accident register and the drug test and the employment DQ file, and it goes on and on. And folks, we may be great mechanics and safety people and recruiters, but when it comes to finance, we're no good at that either. And so, you know, what am I getting at? I know my job. I'm an expert in my field. And you know your job, and you're an expert in your field. And I can't do your job and do my job. So I've got to start trusting the other members on my team. And you know what? If I'm looking at something and I'm like, man alive, this doesn't make sense. And I'm thinking that I'm thinking, man alive, you must have fallen off the bus here today. I mean, what in the world were you thinking? You know what the truth is? You probably know something about that situation that I don't know. And if I knew what you knew, then maybe I would have made the same decision that you made, or vice versa. Maybe you didn't know something that I knew, and if you'd have known that, you'd have made the decision, the same decision that I made. So what I'm getting at is we've got to stop attacking each other and start trusting each other. If we see something that doesn't make sense, then approach the other person and say, hey, that kind of threw a cog in my wheel. You know, what can we do about this? Or what was going on? and my perception is, and that's kind of my white flag. And by the way, this works in marriage too, by the way. But anyway, my perception is you did this. You know what the truth is, whether it's in marriage or at work, most of the time, our perception, which is our own reality, but it has nothing to do with the real reality. So the truth is what we thought they did isn't what they actually did. Or what we thought they did, well, they made that decision based on these facts that we didn't have. Folks, if we will start trusting each other. I think about my time as a heavy weather search and rescue member of Coast Guard Station Tillamook Bay. And 365 life-threatening cases a year. There's only 3 of us on the motor lifeboat. And I was the engineer, there was a coxswain, and there was a crewman. And you know what? We're going out in 20-foot-plus seas, and people's lives are on the line. And if we didn't trust each other, we would not have been able to accomplish our mission. There's only a few times that we did not get there in time. And that's because the people were dead before we even knew that the issue was going on. But how did we get there, and how did we accomplish extraordinary things? Well, because we worked as a team, and we trusted each other, and we knew what our jobs were. So, here's another thing that happens. We start labeling people. Don't label people, because when you label it, it'll let you depersonalize people. Those idiots over in Atlanta, for crying out loud, what were they thinking? Or I got the idiots in operations, those clowns in safety, the bean counters, those drivers. When you label somebody, it allows you to treat them poorly without any remorse. And that's what I see happening quite a lot. You know what? They're not idiots. They're not those drivers. They are hard-working Americans. When you look around your company, what do we have? We have hard-working Americans coming to work to provide for their families. And I don't find that anybody comes today, wakes up this morning and thinks to themselves, man alive, what can I do wrong now? Oh man, I'm going to mess them up. They'll never see this one coming. I'm getting really creative at this. They don't come in thinking that. They come in thinking I'm going to go do my job. And you know what? If we start building trust and building morale and empowering people, you'll find that they not only just come in and go through the motions, but they're looking at what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it and asking themselves, does this make sense? And they're truly engaged. You want to be a force to be reckoned with, a company that other people can't compete with. Start building trust in your organization, and then start building your people so that they also know what their place in the organization is. By the way, I guess I'll put that here because I think this was my last slide, so I want to add this here. One of the biggest slaps in the face that I ever got was, we became ISO 9000 certified, and one part of our program for training new recruiters was to, they would go through orientation, and then they'd sit with all the different departments in safety, and then all the different departments in the company. Now, when they came back, a couple of things happened. I mean, first off, they'd say, hey, by the way, they're saying this different than we're saying it. So, somebody changed the policy and not told us. So we're selling what we thought was the truth, and lo and behold, we didn't have the current truth. Secondly, I started then sending my current recruiters out to go through that process. And here's where I got slapped in the face. When my current recruiters came back and said, you know what, now I see how I fit in this organization and how I contribute to the success of it. Folks, I was floored. I would have thought that everybody would have known how they fit in the organization and how they contributed to the success. But did you know, I read in the Wall Street Journal, the #1 reason that Fortune 100 companies fail, and I think it might have been Fortune 50 actually, but I'll say Fortune 100 companies fail, is because executive vice presidents don't understand how their department contributes to the success of the company. So what happens when we don't understand how we contribute to the success of the company? Then we just come in and start going through the motions. Another thing that I see happen is then people start building silos. You know, they don't know what they're doing. They've been kind of promoted beyond the level of their expertise, and they don't quite know what they're doing, but you know what? You better not get in there and mess with it. And so then they start building turfs. And so, then you have committees, and then everybody's got to talk about it, and pretty soon no decisions are made. Why? Because, well, I don't want to be the one that makes the decision. I'm not going to take ownership responsibility or be accountable. And then the next thing you know, you have a company that's out of business. So, folks, I would hope that we'll start looking at I've mentioned several telltale signs here. You know, the copying the world on emails, and the shin kicking. I hope that as a result of this webinar, and of course it's being recorded, and you could share it and have other people in your company listen to it, that if that's going on at your company, that you can start working on building, and frankly, I'd be glad to help you with it if you need to take this way beyond a 30-minute webinar. Start working on stopping the shin kicking in your company. Start building the trust. Start showing people, how your department contributes to the success of the company, and making them mindful of the fact that the other people in the company are on their same team, and we got to quit shin kicking and injuring our own team, because the only way that we can win this game is together. And you know what? I need those guys working on the trucks and gals working on the trucks and making those things run. I need our safety department doing what they do and keeping the DOT off our front doorstep. I need finance doing what they do so we can all get paid and our customers get billed correctly and such. You get what I'm saying. With that, folks, I don't see any questions. I heard somebody just said, thank you very much, Becky. She said, amen and thank you. Folks, I don't take lightly doing these things. By the way, you've heard me mention I put it as sponsored. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. I am not paid to do this webinar. I'm just loving doing this webinar. I appreciate you folks investing your time. I don't take it lightly. I want to give, thank you, Anna, for your message as well. I just want to give you stuff that you can use to make a difference in the industry. And if I can help you, I'm here for that. And with that, so what I was about to say is, I already did. I'm not paid by those folks, but what they do is they're helping me to build this audience. Folks, we have over 500 people on the webinar, and I don't take that lightly. With that, if you have any questions, then you can email them to me. And we're going to continue with possibly with retention next time. I haven't decided quite yet, or back to recruiting. Maybe I'll mix it a little bit, and just figuring out the hot topics that are coming. So with that, thank you very much, and I appreciate you coming. And you'll be getting the follow-up email with this webinar attached. And we'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.